Welcome back to Today in Atlanta Sports. It is March 16th, and we have literally a litany of things to talk about. I mean, it's been ridiculous. I wanted to record that. We tried to record this like 5 different times, but it's just like every time we record, a new big thing happens, and it's just like, all right, well, we got to write about this. We got to do this. But I think things are going to cool down a little. But of course, maybe we'll start recording this, and Deshaun Watson will be traded to the Falcons. I mean, that's just the way this week has been going. I wouldn't be surprised by anything. But I wanted to start out with the Braves. Matt Olson obviously traded to the Braves for Christian Pache, Shea Langeliers, Joey Estes, and Ryan Cusick. A big deal, big haul for the Braves. Was a little bit worried about it when we did the rapid reaction. I was like, damn, we could have signed Freddie Freeman, not given up all those prospects. But Freeman still remains unsigned. It looks like he's holding out for the biggest deal. And let's just say the Braves got an extension done, which is the bigger part. It's even bigger than the trade. The 8-year extension they lock in with Matt Olson for $168 million. I mean, this is amazing, and it made me already – Matt Olson hasn't – I mean, I think I saw him take his first cut in spring training. Of course, it was a bomb. I already love this guy because, you know, we've been trying to work out a long-term deal with Freddie Freeman for years now. I mean, since last offseason. Hasn't signed. It's clear that there was also – like, he wasn't totally committed to the Braves like we probably were to him. Matt Olson in 24 hours signs an 8-year contract to stay here basically for the remainder of his career. That tells me all I need to know. The loyalty's there. This guy's probably already a better player. He's 4 years younger. We're going to have him at a $21 million average annual value over the next 8 seasons. Huge bargain. And it basically locks the Braves into being contenders with the rest of their young group for the next decade. And it's another just example of AA genius. Huge move. The trade was great, but the extension is what made this thing an A-plus deal.
Yeah, obviously they had the extension worked out before the trade became official because it wasn't, but 8 hours, 12 hours
maybe.
later.
I
There's
do
no
think
way you can get a contract extension that significant done in 12 hours.
I think definitely the layout was there. I mean, just from what Anthopoulos said, and this could just be GM speak, but what he said at the contract is, once they did do it, they worked pretty much from the trade was official for over the next 24 hours to try to get a deal done. I'm sure there was a layout. I agree. Like, that would be ridiculous if it happened that quickly. But regardless, it took Freddie, never signed a deal here. I'm sure these negotiations happened all the time. It took Matt Olson 24 hours to put pen to paper. The guy's from Atlanta. He has a house in Atlanta. He wants to be here. Aside from what he is on the field, I've heard just as good of things off the field. He's a leader. He's a great guy. You couldn't have went to a lab and built up a better guy, both inside and out, to replace Freddie Freeman, who, had a great reputation in the locker room, was also arguably the best first baseman in baseball. But, when you look at this long-term deal, you save $10 million a year by getting Matt Olson. You get a guy who's more in his prime, who'll be 36 at the end of his contract. It's huge for the Braves. It's huge for the Braves. And when you look at a team like the Braves who have the financial constraints that they do, they need deals like this. They need the Albies and the Acuñas and the Olsen deals to happen like this. And when you get them, now you can compete for decades. And it's Alex Anthopoulos, man, a genius, man. Build the damn statue. I'm ready. Like, he should legitimately, if we win multiple World Series, like I think we easily could over the course of these contracts, and let's say he ends up with 3 championships, I want a damn statue. He's just as important as all these other guys, as all these star players. I know he's not going to say that. I think in his press conference, he kind of shed all the light on the players. Like, they're the guys you come see, and that's all true. But this doesn't happen with a guy like that who's willing to make the tough decisions, who's willing to negotiate hard, doesn't give in. I mean, he's just been fantastic at what he does ever since he took over. I mean, he does long-term contracts, short-term contracts, diamonds in the roughs. He's nailed it all. I mean, he's been unbelievable. Trade deadline.
Dude's a gunslinger, just an absolute gunslinger. It's awesome to watch. He's pretty much, this was his first big trade during his tenure, and he knocked it out of the park. I mean, there really isn't anything he can't do. Just like everything you list, he can get high-price guys, low-price guys, value guys, fringe roster guys that end up making a significant contribution. So, yeah, he deserves all the praise. Obviously, the players play, but he's done his part tenfold. Yeah. He's definitely done his part.
Yeah, and I think that's what I love about baseball is it's such a a team effort, from the bottom of the organization, from the coaches in A ball and rookie ball to the GM of the team, to the players at the major league level, to the coaches in the minors. Like every guy has to do their part to win championships. And that's why I think it's so hard to win World Series. And that's why it's such a big deal when it happens. And right now the Braves are just all pulling on the same rope. It's fantastic to watch. And they're going to be great for the next, decade. And who knows? I mean, as long as AA is the GM, we may never be bad again, but those aren't, that's not all the big news we have in Atlanta sports. Deshaun Watson rumors, these are serious, folks. He could be coming to Atlanta. Now, I think it's going to be hard to get a deal done. I mean, we've heard rumors that he prefers, New Orleans. I don't know what he prefers. He's definitely from Atlanta. But if Arthur Blank gives the go-ahead, the Falcons have the best ability to make a package for him. I mean, they can give the best picks. They've got Kyle Pitts. They've got AJ Terrell. They've got the 8th overall pick in the draft. They can move other players around. They can move Matt Ryan, get more picks. They can offer the best package. It's not even going to be close. I think that's rather obvious. The question is, can they convince Deshaun Watson to really, he's going to have to commit to a bit of a rebuild if he wants to come, and he has a no trade clause, so it is up to him. So the latest rumor is, the Falcons are going to meet with him today. They've got a big presentation to convince him to come home. And I think that is probably the biggest thing that's happened in this franchise over the last 5 years, because if they can convince him to want to come to Atlanta, that they have a plan in place, I think they're going to have the best package. And I think this is a deal that could seriously get done.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that people are talking about, gutting the roster just to get Deshaun isn't worth it and all this stuff. You're silly, and you're just devaluing what a quarterback brings. Sure, we might win 4 games next year, but nobody's taking a pay cut to come play with Matt Ryan. I mean, there's already been rumors that free agents are waiting for Deshaun to make his decision so they can just follow him. Allen Robinson has been rumored. Will Fuller has been rumored. Allen Robinson's the best wide receiver on the market right now. Obviously, Devontae Adams is still there, but everybody expects him to re-sign with Green Bay. But Allen Robinson is probably more than willing to take a sweetheart deal to come play with a competent quarterback. I mean, the guy's been catching passes from doofuses his entire career. Deshaun Watson would be head and shoulders the best quarterback. And for that, I mean, Matt Ryan would be too. But clearly he's fond of Deshaun Watson and wants to follow him. And so, yeah, necessarily it would, gut the franchise. What little pieces we have left on the roster would probably be gone. There would be some that stick around, obviously. But getting rid of the guys to get Deshaun Watson is also going to net you free agents who will take less money, similar to what the Tom Brady effect, where people just want to go play with them, so they're willing to sign a below market deal. And that's another thing. The report surfaced that the Texans aren't necessarily seeking 3 first-round picks. That is what they've been firm on, but they've also the reports suggest they just want 5 to 6 high value assets, which is basically, it can be any combination of first round picks and, these perennial young players that Houston can build a foundation on. That's the AJ Terrells, the Chris Lindstroms, those kind of guys. Yeah. So the package flexibility, I think, works in favor of the Falcons, and whatever they deem is less valuable. I think picks are way less valuable than players. Players are proven. Players are a proven commodity, and
especially players like AJ Terrell and Kyle Pitts, which would both be top 5 picks in this draft. Right. So without a doubt. So I think those are probably your most off the table guys is AJ Terrell and Pitts, and I don't think there's any scenario where the Falcons let go of both of them. But at the same time, the thing is about the Falcons is the package isn't going to be the issue. They have like the number 8 pick in this draft. They have Pitts, they have Terrell, they have Lindstrom, they have young players. They even have Grady Jarrett. If that's
2 second-round picks this year, they got it all.
2 second-round picks, and they're going to trade Matt Ryan, which is going to probably net them a first, if not 2 firsts. So they're going to have everything they could possibly want to get in this deal. So they're going to be able to put together the best package. It's really about convincing Deshaun Watson and getting the green light from Arthur Blank. I mean, there's obviously a lot of baggage in the situation. We don't know how, but it seems like the Falcons are serious. And if the Falcons are serious, then it's all about convincing Watson and to come home. And I'll tell you what, if Watson does come home, he'll be a hero in this city. I know there's fans that there's some fans out there that are worried about the baggage and stuff, but if nothing comes of that, and he didn't even get proven, to even go to trial on these cases for criminally, if nothing comes of that, like, this guy is going to be a legend in Atlanta. I mean, I don't really have to even say it. Like, he would be the most talented quarterback the Falcons have ever had. He would put asses in seats. He's the hometown kid. He would revive this city and football in this city. So I think this would be great. And honestly, I'm just ready to see Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, who I still respect, who I think were the right hires, just get a chance to hit the reset button and do what they want to do. Like, right now, they've been forced to do what Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff made them do by restructuring all these contracts and doing stuff like that. I thought they should have, bit the bullet last offseason. They didn't. And now they're in a tough place here. But this is a way out to let them reset. I think if you give a quarterback guru like Arthur Smith, Deshaun Watson, I mean, look what he did with Ryan Tannehill. I mean, he's going to be great. You give Terry Fontenot, some money down the road. He's going to be able to fill in the roster around Deshaun Watson. Yes, it's going to be a year or two, but I'm ready to hit the reset button. And doing so with Deshaun Watson, that answers your biggest question of life after Matt Ryan. And Watson, he could be the quarterback for the next decade plus, at least. I mean, he's 27, 4 years left on his contract. You re-sign him in a couple years. This is a no-brainer to me if you can get it to happen. And hopefully that conversation that they're meeting, I don't know when they're meeting, if it's going on right now, but hopefully it's going well, because it would change the whole vibe around the Falcons in the city. Has just been off ever since the Super Bowl. It would just be a fresh start. We could stop thinking about 2016, move on, hit the reset button. You got a franchise quarterback, a guy that people will get excited about. I'm ready for this to happen if in any way it's possible.
Yeah. There is no precedent for this sort of thing that's happening in Atlanta right now. I mean, we just saw Freddie Freeman he's not getting shipped off like Matt Ryan might, but we could be saying goodbye to two faces of two different franchises. And I don't think there's a precedent for that. A big hurdle in all of this with Matt Ryan and Deshaun Watson is the money. Matt Ryan's due a roster bonus on the third day of the league year, which is this Friday. And at that point, they won't be able to restructure his contract. So if they get stuck paying $48 or $49 million to Matt Ryan, that's probably not a good thing. But what this basically means is this is going to come to fruition in the next 48 to 72 hours, whether he's coming to Atlanta or not. The Falcons don't have time to wait. They have to make other moves. And then, if they do land Deshaun, they're going to want to trade Matt Ryan pretty much as soon as possible to recoup those draft assets. They don't want to, wait till June post June 1st trade, because they want to recoup the draft assets it's going to cost to bring Deshaun to Atlanta. So all of this is going to come very fast.
In the next 2 days.
Yeah. So be prepared. This is going to be a whirlwind. And just like I said, I mean, I can't remember a crazier time in Atlanta sports. I mean, outside the Mike Vick fiasco years ago, Calvin Ridley gets suspended for a full year. The Braves don't re-sign Freddie Freeman. They trade for Matt Olson and then extend him and then make all these other acquisitions. And the Falcons could potentially do a similar thing where the face of their franchise that, for us has been there our entire lives, what we can remember at least. And then it'll be a new direction and a new era, which is exciting. I mean, this is the first move this new regime has done that even gets me out of bed in the morning. I've been painfully writing about this regime for over a year, and I was excited when they got here. But throughout a year, I mean, it's just been brain dead. I have to convince myself to be excited about them. But you do bring up a good point. They have been just pretty much unscrambling the salary cap that Thomas Dimitroff set up for them. They can't make their own moves because they're trying to undo the moves that he did. So this would, this move would officially close the book on that era, and it would start a new era in Atlanta. Some people might not like it. I'm not in the business of judging morality. I just look at football. I'm a football guy. And all I know is Deshaun Watson is a borderline top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And in the NFL, that's all you really need. That is all you need.
I mean, look no further than what happened with Joe Burrow and the Bengals. People were like, "Yeah, we have so many holes on the roster." I'm like, "Well, the Bengals, they had holes on the roster last year. They have holes on the roster now, and they're in the Super Bowl. They almost won the Super Bowl. I mean, they were, maybe one bad call or one thing going their way away from lifting up the trophy. I mean, it just takes one guy like that. Burrow was scrambling for his life, but he made enough plays. You keep Kyle Pitts and you get a couple more weapons for Watson and let him play backyard football back there. You never know what can happen. So, I mean, that's the first piece of the puzzle. Hit the reset button. But that's not all that's happened in the Falcons world. We had a Jake Matthews extension. That was one of the first things that was expected to happen. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, you look at tackles these days playing into their high 30s. Andrew Withers was even playing at 40, which is just unbelievable. But Jake Matthews, only 29 years old, still one of the best at his position. Never elite, but always, top 10 solid, healthy. A guy that I think, when you're trying to make space and remain competitive, which is what if they keep Matt Ryan, they're trying to remain competitive. A guy that I think, you had to extend, get that 3 years. I do think Grady Jarrett could be next. If they don't trade him, we're talking about Deshaun Watson. If they do trade for Deshaun Watson, if they don't use him in the trade, I think they're going to have to extend Grady Jarrett to make even more cap space to make this whole thing work. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. We also had Russell Gage depart. 3 years, $30 million to the Buck. That's a ton of money, if you ask me. No way I'm paying.
To be a wide receiver 3 or 4. That's crazy.
I mean, I was pretty shocked. I mean, it just shows you that's an embarrassment of riches by the Bucks. But I guess that's what happens when Tom Brady comes, and maybe that'll happen when Deshaun Watson comes. You're talking about free agents coming for cheap. You get the Leonard Fournettes of the world, the really talented guys that are slept on. They want to come prove themselves on a good team with a good quarterback. So exactly like you said, that's way too money. Way too rich for my blood as far as Gage is concerned. We both went to LSU. Love Russell Gage. He was one of the most exciting players when LSU wasn't that good. And but still, way too much money for my blood. And really the whole free agent market for the Falcons, super, super expensive. I have a hard time believing, unless they do get a Watson and they can get a hometown discount for, or not, what I mean by hometown, a discount on Allen Robinson or someone like that. I don't really see them getting any receivers in free agency, even as bad as they need them. They just don't have the money. And these guys are going for, I mean, what is Robinson going to command? I mean, he's got to come. If Kirk can get 72 mil, Robinson better get 100 mil.
Christian Kirk getting 16 to 18 AAV is just ridiculous, dude. Yeah. Just ridiculous.
So, I mean, so unless you can get a discount at Allen Robinson or Will Fuller or something like that, I just see, all of a sudden wide receiver being the biggest need for the Falcons in the draft. And I think it's really in play at 8. We thought we could, maybe fill in with some guys, but these guys are just going for way too much money. I mean, you're trying to find value in free agency, and at the wide receiver spot, there doesn't look like there's any value. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just said, hey, we need to maybe sign a couple guys, and we saw them tender Zacchaeus, like guys like that. But other than that, I mean, I think wide receivers got to be probably their biggest priority in the draft. I hate to say that because I want defense and I want offensive line, but I mean, I don't know how you're going to play with Zacchaeus being your number one and Kyle Pitts playing tight end.
For me, it's becoming more and more how I feel about wide receivers is getting closer to how I feel about running backs, where it's just like, dude, don't pay these guys. I mean, Devontae Adams is going to get $30 million a year. I'm a Packers fan, and that's fucking ridiculous. I mean, he is the best receiver in football, arguably, production-wise.
It doesn't matter, but he is.
Production-wise, he's the best wide receiver in football. But, I mean, that is just ludicrous. I mean, I look at like Kyle Shanahan or a Sean McVay, who's able to scheme receivers open more often than some other teams who, pretty much just rely on one-on-one winning. And that's what the Cardinals do, is just rely on one-on-ones. But that seems like a much more efficient way to operate than to pay these guys, these wide receiver ones, $20 million a year. I just don't see it. This receiver class in the draft is loaded. There's a different type of receiver for every team, whether you need a big, strong, fast guy or a small scat guy, a possession guy, 50-50 jump ball guy. There's this receiver class is loaded. this would be the class to draft 2-3 guys and just, two of them are going to hit. So
Yeah,
I don't see the Falcons making any additions to the receiver room through free agency that aren't, one year deals worth $5-6 million. Just because these guys are getting overpaid. It doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, if Deshaun comes, I'm going to change this whole entire take and basically say we can get those guys now because they might take a little bit of a discount. You can backload some of these deals, next year or the year after that. I mean, the Falcons salary cap is completely clean.
Yeah.
$100 million plus of salary cap space without, certain extensions and restructures, Grady Jarrett and et cetera. So the light at the end of the tunnel is right there. If we can land Deshaun Watson, screw the draft picks, we'll just spend $80 million in free agency and bolster the roster that way. There's multiple ways to build a championship roster, and you just got to be flexible with your circumstance. Seems
look at the Rams.
Fontenot wants to do that. Yeah, look at the Rams.
The Rams haven't drafted in forever. It seems like they have 5 draft picks a year, and they built a championship roster. So you get Deshaun Watson, everything else will fall into place. I respect Terry Fontenot being able to find value, whether it's in the draft, whether it's free agency. If you get that pillar that you need at the quarterback position, a top 5 QB like Watson, they'll be just fine. Back to the Braves. Olsen was not the only signing. We had 2 other big ones. One just happened. Eddie Rosario welcomed back the 2021 NLCS MVP. Really happy to have him back. The Braves needed an outfielder without a doubt. And preferably from the left side. So it made sense that they brought back Rosario. I also think he's going to be much cheaper than Jorge Soler. I do think this takes them out of the Jorge Soler sweepstakes. I hope I'm wrong. I love Soler, but I have a feeling Soler could get like 50 mil. I mean, what he showed with the Braves and going into the postseason, I thought he had 40 home run power. I mean, we've seen him hit 40 home runs before, but he also showed improvement in taking his walk, his plate discipline. I mean, he was a totally different player than he's been his whole career. And I think there's going to be clubs that are willing to take a risk on that because, 50 million sounds like a lot when you look at his baseball reference page, but you're paying for what you're getting in the future, not what you got in the past. And I think what you get in the future with Soler could be a superstar, really, if he keeps playing like the way that he did in Atlanta. Colin McHugh, he's a local product, a guy that I've been, pounding the table for since the start of the offseason. I thought he was an under radar guy that made a lot of sense, being that he grew up a Braves fan, went to Berry College in Georgia, has been absolutely lights out as a reliever since becoming a reliever. 2 out of the last 3 years, sub-2 ERA. The Braves needed a right-handed arm, especially with Yates probably not going to be ready for a while. Loved this signing. I think it gives, you look at the Braves relief corps this year, if the night shift performs anything like they did in the playoffs, and you add McHugh to that, and then Yates comes later in the season. Alex Anthopoulos said they're hoping to see him by August, but let's say he doesn't even come until September. We're not going to need him until then anyways. That's one of the best bullpens in baseball, hands down. It could be the best. So really exciting stuff to see the Braves take the bullpen seriously. It hasn't always been their top priority. They've changed on that path. They've really made an emphasis on bullpen over the last couple of years. And it's going to pay off big time. You saw it pay off big time in the playoffs. The postseason baseball has changed so much. It's so much more reliant on relievers. And we saw that with the Braves last year. We're kind of lucky that Tyler Matzik and Will Smith and all those guys pitched as well as they did. But now with McHugh and Yates, expect them to dominate in the later innings once those 2 guys are healthy.
Yeah, McHugh, I might be able to throw as fast as McHugh, but he throws saucers. Dude, I was watching some highlights, and this dude's orbiting around the plate. He's nasty. And, if, whenever Kirby Yates does eventually come back, and even if he's, 80% of what he was, that's unbelievable for our bullpen. What do we need? A back-end starter, maybe some bench help, and then the roster's done. We're pretty much 90% there, 95% there. It's the best roster in baseball right now.
After they, right before we jumped on here, I saw they signed Alex Dickerson, who can play outfield. I think that pretty much wraps up the Braves' outfield needs. I expect Duvall to man center field. And when Acuna comes back, I expect them to kind of platoon between Duvall and Acuna in center. They'll be able to get the job done. I was a little surprised Anthopoulos was so willing to say hey, when Acuna's back, he can play center. He's even said doesn't love playing center field, much more comfortable in right, and he's coming off a torn ACL. But when you need a guy, you need a guy, and the Braves obviously didn't want to spend the prospects it would take to bring in an all-star like Cedric Mullins or Brian Reynolds. There weren't a lot of guys in free agency that were great offensively and could play center field. So they filled in on the corner outfields. They got Eddie Rosario. Adam Duvall can play center field. Acuna can play center field. They're going to go with that platoon, it looks like. And Dickerson's actually, I looked at his stats. I didn't even really know much about him, but pretty solid numbers. I mean, he struggled a little last year, but during the shortened season, he had like a 927 OPS. I think he still has some pop. He has some pop in his bat. I think 26 homers over the last 2 seasons. So pretty solid signing for $1 million, non-guaranteed. And this is what I said. AA is the GOAT because not only does he hit on Matt Olson extensions, long-term deals, pillow contracts like Josh Donaldson and Marcell Ozuna, he hits on the diamonds in the rough. Like I'm telling you, I barely even know a thing about Alex Dickerson. I bet you he comes in and fills in and hits a bunch of clutch hits. If someone gets injured early in the year and we need him to start in right field, we're all of a sudden going to be loving this Alex Dickerson guy, just like we did with Adrianza and Guillermo Heredia. And so, I mean, the guy hits on everything. That's another dime in the rough I guarantee you should watch out for. And wrapping this up, like what's next for the Braves? Like I said, they're pretty much done. The last thing I would say is a starting pitcher. I do think there are some left on the market. We talked about Zach Greinke. He might cost a little much for their budget. I think, Johnny Cueto's, guys like that. Some veteran arm that could cost 1 year, $5 million, $5 to $10 million, something like that. I would expect that to bring in competition for the Yanoas and the Wrights and the Davidson. Or they could swing for the fences. I mean, they're already all in. If they wanted to swing for the fences and make a trade, I would watch out for the A's, who they just dealt Matt Olson. They have a couple of pitchers, Frankie Montas and Manea, that are available that I think, they've already dealt Chapman and Olson. They're in full rebuild mode. So expect those guys to be traded before the start of the season. Braves could definitely be interested in them. Maybe they strike another deal with the A's. And I would watch out for the Reds. They've blown everything up. Luis Castillo has 2 years left on his contract. He's absolutely filthy. If the Braves could add him, it'll cost a pretty penny, but you want to go all in. I don't see it's going to be hard as hell to beat a rotation of Morton, Anderson, Fried, and Luis Castillo, and Yanoa, and whoever they have at fifth with this lineup. So if you want to go all in and give yourself the best chance to win a championship over the next 2 years, I could see it happening if they wanted to make a trade with either the A's or the Reds, who are both in full rebuild mode, and I expect those guys to get traded before the start of the season.
Yeah, you mentioned, there's a little concern about defense in the outfield, and who cares if it's even average? When you're mashing 300-plus home runs as a team, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a bet, and I'm sure there is something in Vegas you can find if you're ever there, place the bet that who's going to hit the most homers in the majors this year. I would put a fat bet on the Braves. They should hit 30 plus, 300 plus, which I think only 4 or 5 teams have done ever. Maybe not even that many. But yeah, they could easily hit 300 plus, especially with the DH coming. I mean, this lineup is just going to turn over, and I feel bad for any opposing pitcher that has to face it. It's going to be miserable. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, there is not a hole in this lineup. Every guy can go for 30 home runs. I'm pretty sure Dansby Swanson, like I haven't even looked at it. Dansby Swanson's probably going to be hitting last. The guy hit 27 bombs last year. He's a stud, and he's going to be hitting ninth. Like, good luck. Good luck. That's all I can say.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of dents in the chop house. I can't wait. I hope I get hit in the head by a Matt Olson home run.
Yeah, it would be beautiful. But that wraps it up for this episode of Today in Atlanta Sports. Thank you guys for listening. This will be up on our YouTube channel later today.